Assuming he's coming. Well, we're going to get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Council meeting for December 20th, 2021. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all other holidays celebrated to everyone. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. Tonight we're going to have a moment of silence for all those first responders who are out in those plow trucks, keeping these roads clean and clear and safe. And let's think good thoughts for them, because they're out there when none of us are. Thank you. All right, folks, before I move to the school district office update on public comment, is there anyone else who would like to address the council this evening under public comment? Yes, sir.
Once again, Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. Now, just let me know here, can we discuss things that are on the agenda here? Anything that's on the agenda?
Well, we're going to have a public hearing about the ordinance. I mean, if you want to say something about it, feel free, or you can wait till the public hearing. The other pieces are all pieces of new business, so I don't. You can certainly speak to any of them, but I don't know that we've shared any information yet. So whatever you desire.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to speak about this. I believe it's an ordinance in regards to giving some tax benefits, let's say, to Woodmont Common. I believe I spoke about this before, but once again, we continued that, and here we are again. My personal opinion on it is this, that with all the burden that the taxpayers in Londonderry are under, it does not seem reasonable that we're going to give a very large corporation a tax break.
Yes. We're listening.
I'm sorry. Was there a delay there? I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
we're listening.
So this is a very important decision.
Yes.
This is Woodmont Common, which I believe started in 2013. Here we are, like 8 years later. Apparently, we're not satisfied that it hasn't moved forward enough, and so we feel as though we got to give them a break. I do not agree. I think if we checked with a lot of taxpayers in this town, they also would not agree. And I think it's very important that we talk to the taxpayers and have them input. I don't want to be the only one speaking about this. Maybe we need to go out and call some of our taxpayers and say, how do you feel about this? Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
What?
could I
I'm
just
sorry.
clarify one small item? The proposed tax exemption is not for Woodmont Commons while it's on their property. It would be anyone who developed there, which could be an entity other than Woodmont Commons. So I just want to make sure that clarification's in there for the record.
All right, well, we'll get into that in the details in the public hearing. I appreciate it. No. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, anyone else before I invite the schools up? Yes, sir.
It's been a long time since I've been here. I'm trying to navigate through all your furniture. All right, Doug Thomas, 143 Mammoth Road. I just want to take the time right now to say that on behalf of your elected state representatives, Representative Baldessaro, Tom Dolan, Betsy McKinney, Wayne McDonald, Dave Lundgren, Sherman Packard, and myself, we like to wish the town, the citizen, the council a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and New Year, and to appreciate all the town has done. And we're at your disposal for whatever we can do to help out the town, and we wish you all a happy holiday.
Well, thank you very much, and we wish all of you the same. Yes, sir.
Richard Polinsky, 89 Hall Road. I'm going to want to talk on Woodmont, so if you want, I can wait until you get into it.
Well, you can come back up again during the public hearing.
Okay,
if you
well,
want.
that's fine. I have to say, a couple of things I have a problem with is, about a year ago, we had a problem about where we were going to put legal notices, and you decided to go with the Derry News. All well and good, you made that decision. So why was the legal notice for the last meeting 2 weeks ago for this particular item in the Union Leader, not in the Derry News, when you had put a posting in the Derry News for the same meeting for the unanticipated revenues? I believe it was for the recreational field for a new swing or whatever it was. I forget exactly what it was. The whole idea was to put it in, while it was illegal, it seemed a little unethical that it would go up there when it doesn't have the circulation in this town nearly of the Derry News or the Londonderry Times. It's almost like it was put in there intentionally so people wouldn't see it. That's my first problem.
Excuse me, Mr. Solicitor, please answer his question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So Mike Malaguti, Assistant Town Solicitor. I can go through, this is going to take a minute, but I can go through the, I didn't expect this actually to come up this evening, but I'm happy to address it. Of course, the Thanksgiving holiday was in this time frame as well, which the council should keep in mind. But as far as the time frame of this is concerned, the agenda for this particular meeting that Mr. Belinsky's talking about was posted on the town website on 11/19 of 2021. There was a first reading actually before the hearing that's being referred to on 11/22 of 2021. 11/22 of 2021 also happened to be the deadline to get this in the Derry News, and that was a shorter deadline than normal because of the Thanksgiving holiday that I just referenced. On November 23rd, the notice was sent to the Union Leader. Of course, Thanksgiving occurred on 11/25, and the notice ran on 11/26 in the Union Leader. On 11/29, the notice was posted on the town's website, and on 12/3, the agenda was posted on the town's website. So that's 18 days of notice on the town's website, a first reading as additional notice, 11 days of notice in the Union Leader. Mr. Chairman, this was an administrative decision that did not involve the town council, the town manager, the assistant town solicitor, that's myself, or any other senior staff. This was done in the ordinary course of business. It's tempting to imagine a grand conspiracy, but the reality is usually less interesting. Except during the summer, Mr. Chairman, we work in 2-week cycles. As a town staff, we're trying to address the deliverables arising from the last town council meeting, plus everything else that comes up in between from an operational standpoint. In 2019, there was, of course, the discussion before the town council, and the town council left this in the town staff's hands as an operational matter. It's my understanding that's where the town council would like to continue. The current practice is to use the Derry News as long as it's practical. It's not always practical, given those 2-week cycles that I referenced, holidays, and other factors that do become involved. The posting was legal. In fact, it provided more notice than was required. And I would note that other town departments also missed the Derry News deadline that week. Mr. Chairman, I would also note that in response to comments that we've received from the public, the town staff has updated the town's website to include a section entitled Town Legal Notices. And that is so that the public can access a single space on the town's website to be able to see all those legal notices for increased visibility. And so I would submit to you, Mr. Chairman, that the town staff does everything it can, and then some, at the council's behest, to make sure that the public has as much notice as legally required, and then some.
Thank you.
Okay, as I said at the beginning, I know it was legally done. Doesn't really matter. There was a big thing, we're gonna put all legal notices came from this board in the Derry News. Whether they had early deadlines or what, work within those. Because not many people get the Union Leader. There's very low readership in this town. So you're not getting out. You have a paper in town, whether you guys like it or not, that goes to everybody for free. Put it in there and then everybody gets it. It's a non-issue. And it doesn't have this air of we're trying to keep people from knowing about it. So that's number one. Number two is, regardless of what you come up with tonight on this particular item, I disagree with it, whether it's Woodmont or the developers that build within Woodmont. When this was done, one of the things I had talked to a couple of people about was putting in place a construction schedule and have that backed up with performance bonds. So you wouldn't run into a situation like that. But of course, I don't get listened to, just like the $635 million on the power plant that we owe them. That's what you should have done. If you're going to go forward with this, the enabling legislation allows you to put this on the ballot in March and let the people decide this, whether it's going to be a 10-year thing, 5-year, 3-year, whatever your final numbers are on this. I think this is a bigger issue than letting 5 people, or tonight 4, decide this for the taxpayers. They just got whacked, most people, with large increases. This, no matter how you want to look at it, it will be the taxpayer will be supplementing it. Because even if you spend less on your budget, they would still be taxed less if you were collecting the full taxes from people. We shouldn't be supplementing. I get what you're trying to do. You want this thing finished, get it done. I get all that. It's their land, they get to develop it. It needs to end with the taxpayer supplementing the developers. And if this is such a great idea, let the people decide. Even if it wasn't in the enabling legislation, I think it's RSA 49C, you could vote to let the people decide. It doesn't even have to be in there. So that's what I want to say. Let the people decide. You only got 3 months till the elections anyway. 3.5. Let them decide. Put it forward, get it in place, start advertising it, sell the idea, and if the people voted in, so be it. I won't be one of them.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get a clarification here. First of all, Mr. Belinsky, there's no unethical activity going up here at all. So I take offense to that. Number two, no, you listen to me.
I know, I gotta listen.
Because I'll tell you what, over a year and a half ago, you called the chairman a useless pizza. I won't finish it off in the back room, and I won't tolerate that. There's no one up here that's unethical. No one's done anything unethical. And as far as it goes with the newspaper, the local newspaper in town, the owner of the newspaper sits on this board, and that's considered a conflict of interest. Unbelievable. Yeah, you're right. Unbelievable.
I think you were the one that called the over $6.35 billion to build a power plant.
I wasn't on the board at that time.
Oh, yes, you were.
Easy.
It was just last year.
Sir, if you are out of order, please stop.
Yeah, it is normal.
Sir,
Your mouth.
sir, you are out of order. Please stop. Gentlemen, you wanted to speak about the school district office tonight. Please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and council, Mr. Town Manager, Assistant Town Manager, Mike. Just here to give you guys a little update. I forwarded, Kirby was going to distribute you guys the plans for the rough draft of documents that we had developed over the last couple of months that are out for pricing now of the proposed building adjacent to Town Hall. We did receive some preliminary pricing this afternoon about 4:30 from our OPM, Owners Project Management Trident Group, and that was just preliminary. So over the next week, that'll be vetted and gone through with the committee to present to the school board on January 6th. With the architect and Ekman Construction. We'll do that presentation with the committee that was developed for this purpose. As you can see, it's the rendering of the exterior is a replica of this building. Several meetings have been taken place over the last month or two to get it to look the same as this building. The floor plans have been gone through with the superintendent and his staff to make sure it covers everything that is required for district office to operate properly. And the square footage has been designated to be where we're not indulging on too much square footage, but just enough that's comfortable to work in a good environment. So as I stated, we're going to present to them on January 6th. We have a potential bond hearing on January 18th if the school board acts on this on that night. And just kind of wanted to come forward with the drawings that have been out for pricing over the last month or so. And just kind of wanted to get on. I know the attorneys have been talking as of recent and working through the land situation, so the bonding company is comfortable too if this moves forward. And I am assume that the council will have to do some sort of public hearing in the near future if this is to go forward. So we just wanted to get on your radar to see if that could be potentially slotted somewhere in the near future if this does go forward. And that, so we're not at the 11th hour and don't follow the protocol of the way we're supposed to do business here. So just a quick update. I don't know if Tony wants to add to that.
Just hold 1 second, just for me.
Sure.
Justin, what's our deadline for ballot for warrant?
Citizens petition is,
It's no, for us to put something on the, on the ballot.
oh, that would be January 17th, the last public hearing.
All right, January 17th. Mike, have you heard back from the school's attorney yet?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I spoke with him late last week, and he indicated that the draft that I sent on December 5th was under review, and he'd be in touch shortly.
So that gives you guys some sort of an idea.
Okay.
That's our timeline.
Yeah, and so, Tony DeFrancesco, volunteer. We just wanted to make sure tonight, A, that we had done what you asked. We told you that we were gonna make the building look similar. It does, it's pretty much exact. We told you that, the town manager had said we need a little bit of space, can you give us a couple offices and some storage? We've done that. The community asked us to make a building that was smaller. We've done that than what the district office is now. We've done pretty much as a group sanctioned by the school committee to do everything that was asked. So really moving forward, what we're asking for is that we stay on the timeline for the town side with the town solicitor and whoever else needs to be involved to make sure that we're able to get this on the ballot for the spring or whatever needs to be done so that we can put a building with school money on a town side piece of land. It sounds very simple, but apparently it isn't. So we need to make sure that the timeline, so that we can get public hearing and whatnot in line. And that's why we're here today, to make sure that we're there, or we're doing that, or that we're moving forward, or whatever. So
Tell me where the storage is. So far, I see that 206 square feet.
directly across from the two offices,
So that's the 53 square feet.
across the hall. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yep.
259 square feet. How much money are we putting towards this?
We have up to 300 and, what's the balance, Justin? It's around 350.
So $1,000 a square foot, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna need. What we're gonna need to know is our next meeting is January 10th. If you're meeting and talking about this on January 6th, and assuming that you're gonna be somewhere between $3 and $4 million on your bond, we're gonna need a consensus from the school board by January 10th, so that we can prepare for January 17th of whether or not you're gonna move forward or not.
Yep.
We don't need a vote, but we need a consensus.
Sure.
Because, so that we can move forward.
Yes.
So without that, we really can't do much.
Yeah, we're hoping to have that on the 6th.
Yeah.
Okay,
The intention is, after that presentation, that the school board's gonna,
because
do their thing.
basically, we can't act until you do.
I understand.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Yes.
You mentioned that this is going to be a reduction in square footage from what you have right now.
Yes,
What is that reduction?
a lot.
Can you estimate what it is?
So, if I was gonna do percentages, as a trained physical educator and not a math guy, I would say it's at least 20%, maybe more.
Yeah. Just under 9,000 square feet, then you got less staircase, elevator, so office space is down. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so if you look at it from an office standpoint, not counting the elevators and the stairways and the hallways and whatever, there's 2,775 square feet of offices for 24
24 employees.
24 employees, 2,775 feet of actual, and that's today's number. We're still paring down the interior, and the exterior is pretty much
Done.
set, but the interior, we're still playing around with the jigsaw puzzle on that, but,
Yep.
so I don't know if that answers your question.
20% reduction is fine with me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not for or against this, just don't want to rush it. When were these meetings that you guys had? I wanted to attend and I saw nothing. I didn't know where were they posted? I just didn't see them. Were the public allowed to go?
Anyone was allowed to come to anything. They were at
But-
the school district office. It wasn't a, it wasn't a
posted?
published item. It wasn't posted.
Yeah,
no,
so
it was-
how were people supposed to know if they wanted to go and give input?
Their input will be at the public hearings.
Right.
Okay, so this also went up from it's not gonna go over 2 to 4 now, roughly? At the first meeting I was at, you guys were talking, it was only gonna be around 2 to maybe 3. Now it's 3 to maybe 4?
2.5 to 3 was what was said at that first meeting. We have a snowball number right now, but the group's got to get together and make a decision on a bunch of things. So we don't have a number. We're not prepared to give a number, and we're not going to give a number tonight.
I'm guessing 3 to 4.
I would assume it's gonna be more like 5, but that's my own opinion.
I guessed, just so you're.
And my guesstimation would be more 4 to 5, but knowing what the price of materials and what people get for labor. So these offices are decent-sized offices, but do we need to have permanent structures in case you want to reconfigure these offices somewhere differently? Is there a way to think about maybe using walls that can be moved
So
to readjust them to save on costs?
Yeah, so I'm on board with that. I was all over that, and then we got into the legal, soundproofing, all kinds of stuff that, as someone who's done a fair share, didn't think about. But every time you have a special ed meeting, it has to be basically in a soundproof vault. Bring down the cone of silence.
Okay, there's some offices there like payroll and the superintendent and these things that don't necessarily. I'm just trying to figure out ways to be more effective and more efficient with this building, because as things evolve and people change, and who knows, maybe you decide to outsource your payroll and all of a sudden there's no need for that, but IT grows, and so now you can reconfigure things as opposed to we got to rip down walls in order to accommodate it and things like that. And I can't imagine that every single room in here has to be code of silence, dome, get smart sort of thing.
I would say you're correct, but I would also say most of them do. Most of them do.
When
You can't have these folks can't have conversations on the telephone and have other people hearing. You just can't do it. It's not. I mean, I get it from a financial standpoint, and early on, I was waving the flag with you, but as I got educated, I realized it really isn't practical, and it's not useful, for an $84 million company to
Right,
have
you're not really a
employees and-
company, you're more of a nonprofit because you're using other people's donated money to you, so therefore it should be done very publicly and the people should really have input.
And they will.
As to how their money
And they will.
that they worked hard for is being spent.
No one's hiding anything.
I'm
The
just
public is
saying,
gonna have-
I'm just-
The public is gonna have, there's gonna be public hearings on both sides of this table, so no
Okay.
one's hiding anything, no one's hid anything, no one's done anything wrong.
I didn't say that anybody
It's
did.
not-
I'm just saying it's not that type of company. You didn't raise these funds
I
through
understand.
payment of the school. They were raised through taxes, and so therefore we
I
have
understand.
to really be cautious of how we spend them.
And let's be clear, I'm not a school district employee.
That's
and
fine, but
and
you
I'm a
are connected to the
taxpayer,
school.
And no one's trying to hide anything, and I don't want that to get out there, and so I'll
I
say
didn't
it
say
again.
that, Tony.
No
Stop
one's
being so
hiding
defensive.
anything.
So anyway, I'd like to evaluate these rooms, and I'd like to know how many of them actually really do need the cone of silence, and how many of them could get by with just a false wall.
That could be done.
Yeah.
So perhaps that's something you can address in the public hearings at the schools.
And
Absolutely.
let me just hit on one thing, Deb. These are only 60% plans. These are just out for budget purposes for maximum price.
Right.
So this is going to go through public hearing early January. But even after that, if the board decides to go forward, it goes to bond. It gets approved. Now the final work starts with the committee and the architect firm, where the fine tuning of office space, and maybe there's some cost savings that we can do from the initial number that we don't have to borrow on the bond amount
Right.
if it goes forward. So this is good process. But the time we've had from when the school gave the go-ahead to the committee to see if it's viable to do, to try to save the taxpayers years of lease payments and see if where this land
understand
is
the whole
used.
thing
So
of it,
we didn't rush anything other than to put a 60% set of plans together with a format in a similar setting that they have now in a smaller square footage environment on a piece of town-owned property where we can do some significant savings to put tax dollars into the classroom rather than to a landowner in town, and bring some revenue back into the town for tax payments that we don't have to pay to get back. So this
like I said,
process.
I didn't say I was
No,
against
but I
it.
just wanted to finish the what you stated is now this process, if it does move forward, now the planning starts. We probably don't put a shovel in the ground till July or August. It's going to take March, April, May, June, July to finish drawings, finalize floor plans. This was 1 or 2 meetings with district office, the superintendent, his staff, to make sure it worked for them.
Yep.
They're the ones that got to operate this daily. So it'll take a lot more input and community.
But how much is, so after all that, so you're saying almost 2 years to build, right?
No, it would actually be in the ground this coming July, but that's
And then you
ground
still
up.
have to buy out of your lease, which,
That would be at the end. Yep,
okay.
Yep.
And like I said, and will these notices be publicized?
absolutely.
Because I really have had a lot of calls about people like, I wanted to go to these meetings, and I personally wanted to go to some of them. I went to the first one because I knew about it, and then I didn't see anything anywhere, so I had no idea when or where these things were happening.
Basically, that was the first meeting with the committee with Trident Group. You attended, and a few other folks.
Yep.
And then the drawings began. The process started with advertising. They brought in 4 or 5 contractors. We did the interviews. We selected one at that time to go ahead, got the approval of the school board. They met with the superintendent, one meeting, then the second meeting to finalize, to get to the drawings you have in front of you, and then out to price. That's happened in the last 60 days. So now the finishing touches, the 60 to 100% for construction, will take from March till probably July 1 or August 1 before we start
I guess I
construction.
didn't think we needed so many of these since, as Tony had said, it's a complete mirror of the other side. So I guess in my mind, all of this really wasn't that necessary. It needed just to be tweaked.
No, but if it was a complete mirror, it would be much larger.
Right.
But I mean, of what was the what is could be just the same.
Yeah, but it isn't. It's smaller. You have less square footage in this new addition
Than that wing.
than you do on the existing wing.
Okay.
And we did that for 2 reasons. One was for sight lines, and 2 was because some of us felt that the square footage was too large and where they are. And so we realized right off the bat that we don't need all the square footage of making an exact wing. And so for cost savings, for practicality's sake, it shrank
Okay, thank you.
by probably 24
I'm
feet.
good, thank you very much.
Jim?
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for doing this. This is pretty good. Real quick question. Kevin?
Yes.
You've looked over the square footage, and the square footage that we're looking for is within
Sufficient for us.
parameters?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. The second thing is, there are 2 floors, the core section of the floors, center core sections. Can we possibly look at pulling that out and using portable walls there? That's where your meeting rooms are, storage and things like that. It's not the perimeter where you have your offices. I'm talking about the core sections of each floor.
Yeah, but the cores have the elevators. That's
No,
going to be.
no, I'm talking
that's
about,
gonna be a
Tony,
problem.
I'm talking about the core section.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that certainly, that can be
That's-
looked at.
I mean, I understand the offices, I get it.
Yeah, one of the things we did,
Seen the cores
just,
change.
and this really isn't a discussion for this board. You all are gonna decide on philosophically, either you want it there or you don't. You know, but, so, what we did was we shrank, when we shrank a bunch of the offices, currently, some of those large offices are used for those private meetings. Not gonna be able to do that anymore. So instead of one conference room, which they have up there now, one large one, we did 2 smaller ones, one on each floor, so that they can take the meetings that they used to have in those offices and use those rooms. In addition, there's this room, which can be scheduled, and the 2 smaller conference rooms down the hallway here that also can be scheduled and used according to folks that I've talked to.
For a small nominal.
For a fee. So once we did all that, then we were able to shrink that square footage to what you see in front of you. And we also realized right off the bat that we had a sightline issue with the front oval. Rather than redesigning that and spending a whole bunch of money, you shorten that side. When you come in the front oval, you see the front door of this building, and you see the front door of what will be the new school district building, and you notice that we barrel vaulted both of the entrances to make it match, and we also did the same thing in the back. On the rear. So,
Okay, Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This initial cut looks real good. So, Bob Slater, the last iteration of the school district office ended up in such disrepair that the HVAC system wasn't workable anymore. It had been cut up and moved around so much. In fact, in some cases, I understand it was a danger to the people working in it because of the mold and so forth that were accumulating in that building. So my question to you is, as a construction expert, are you comfortable looking at the layout of this new building that we're going to be able to avoid those types of HVAC problems as it comes together?
Yeah, Tom, from back then when that original building was built, the codes were a lot less looked at as today. The standards are through the roof, and that's a reason for everything costing a lot more too. But and that's a reason back a year ago we went to an OPM of hiring Trident Group, owner's project management team, which will oversee requisition pays. They will walk through the end of the month with the general contractor to make sure things are done to standard, as well as some of the committee members, and make sure everything is up to the standards or above the standards of today. So that's another reason. The school district has always done things that I've been in town 37 years, that it's a committee here of all working folk that are trying to meet, trying to, work with an architect, trying to work with a design firm and build these buildings. That's why we started the 10-year master plan about a year and a half ago. We're about halfway through it. We're on task 3, heading to task 4. And what I had brought to the board and to the superintendent is you need a representative that can work with us and take care of this so they can educate. We can do our job as well as support the schools, but know that somebody is watching our back that is experienced in the construction field. And that's all these folks do. They write the contracts, they make sure the Londonderry School District and the Londonderry taxpayers are protected with documentation. They follow through with all the warranties and walkthroughs at the end. So this is a whole, that's why we went to hiring Trident Group as an owner's project management team, which Londonderry School District has never done in the past, as far as I know. It was always individuals and groups, and you just can't watch everything that way, and you're always looking. And Mark has been very instrumental from Trident on behalf of the school with the master plan, as well as getting these documents pushed out and pricing within 45 days. I mean, it's, to get to that point. So I feel very comfortable that you are going to get one of the best buildings you could pay for.
And keep in mind, Council Dolan, that the school district facilities person has been involved in this process from day one.
Yep.
And also your facilities manager has been on board with this process as well. He came late into the process because he was recently hired 2 months ago, whatever it was. But he has also been involved in this process just to make sure that we're crossing all the Ts and dotting all the Is. Both of those facilities guys have a tremendous amount of experience with this kind of stuff and are also looking after the taxpayers' interest as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. I sincerely hope you're successful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, to close this portion out, just to reiterate, we need some answers from your
Yep.
legal representation before the end of the year. In addition to that, it is non-negotiable that we are going to be selling land to ourselves.
Yep.
So we're not going to sell land to the schools from the town. That just isn't going to happen.
Yep.
Understood.
The other piece is that we're going to need a decision, at least a consensus, by January 6th so that we can move on things. Are we good with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so.
I
basically
assume,
what we're going to need.
Yeah.
So
And
if you're going to get opposition from the school board, better to know sooner rather than later.
yeah, it's on the agenda for the 6th. We need an answer that night because the bond hearing has to be scheduled for the 18th to make it in time if it goes forward, so we can notify you right after that meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I understand, just to put a bow on it, what you have in front of you is a template that's probably going to change.
Understood.
It's not cast in stone. It's just, it's this far in the process. We still got 50% or more to go. So,
Understood.
thank you so much for letting us
One
speak.
second, we are in public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment about this portion only? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further on public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Dave Wally, Public Works Director and Municipal Facilities. Some of you may have noticed in the town common, there are 2 large spruce pine trees that are in decline and dying. We had a development late in today's operation that the tree crew is available for tomorrow. We had previously decided to do that at the end of January after the high sensitivity and visibility of the common for Christmas time and whatnot. They're available tomorrow, and would like to proceed with go ahead and remove those. The ground should be sufficient to do the removal. We also currently have a stump grinder in our possession as well, and rather than re-rent it later on, which would cost us a little bit more, we thought it'd be make the decision to go ahead and remove those trees tomorrow. But again, just due to the sensitivity and everybody's seeing what's going on, we want to make sure that everybody's well aware of that those were going to be removed.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I brought this up to Kevin 2 years ago. I'm so happy you do. I was worried that some ice storm, it was gonna crash across the street. I'm so glad that
we did
it's
have an
getting
arborist
taken
look at
down.
them just to make sure that, if we had to move them up, and when we started looking at this,
Those are
and I
dead.
believe it was early September, maybe late September, early October, make sure there was no real public safety, otherwise it would have been removed if there was imminent danger. But we did decide to go ahead and schedule them, but it was just going to be later into the season. So where there's a little bit of snow, it's fine to go out there and do it now. If we had waited until the end of January, there might have been much more snow, and we'd have to remove it with some equipment and whatnot, but
So, will
It's a
it
good
take a
thing.
day, 2 days?
should take a day.
Complete removal?
Should they, yeah, there, I also identified on the corner of the stone wall is a pine tree as well, right on the, right away of Mammoth
Yeah.
Road.
Yeah.
It's behind the stone wall, it's dead, it's leaning towards the street, so
Yep,
we
get that
identified
down
that
too.
too, so it could be a day and a half in that area, potentially two, but it should go fairly
Yeah,
quick.
no, that's good.
He, Dave answered my question. I was gonna have a question about the stump grinding, and you beat me to it.
Yep, so those would be ground as well.
All right, so take care of it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, public comment is closed. Before I ask for a motion to move to public hearing, during the budget workshop tonight, we're going to be discussing things around police cybersecurity. In addition to that, we'll be also discussing some areas around deficiencies or systems that could be updated that we've become aware of around the community with regards to the safety of some of our other buildings and some of the other community buildings. So just in full notice so people know we're going to talk about that at the same time. All right, I'll take a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're open a public hearing on ordinance 2021-03, ordinance relative to creating the Londonderry Commercial Industrial Property Tax Incentive Program. This has been continued from December 16th. Since this continuation, based on feedback we had given to staff, there have been some changes made. If we could review those changes first.
Sure, I'll turn it over to Mike Malaguti to go over the changes based on the feedback that we had.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the feedback that we got from the council at the last hearing was twofold. It was, one, a desire to see more flexibility in the council to be able to set both the duration and the amount of the exemption, and that the tiers, so $1 million for the lowest tier project, 2.5 for the next tier, and $5 million for the top tier, were too low and unrealistic. And so what we as a staff did was to go back and make changes as follows. We increased the tier amounts to start at $2.5 million, move to $5 million, and then settle at $10 million for the tier one, or the highest exemption amount. And what we also did was we set bands within which the council can set the exemption percentage based on the amount of public benefit that the council finds. So for a tier one project, instead of just stating that the tax exemption percentage amount will be 50%, we gave the council the ability to select a percentage between 40 and 50%. For a tier two project, between 30 and 40%, again, instead of specifying 40%. And then for a tier three project, between 20 and 30%, instead of 30% as it had been previously. The other thing we did, Mr. Chairman, was for a tier one project, where previously the ordinance set 10 years of tax relief at 50%. What we did instead was we gave the council the ability to select either 5 or 10 years of tax relief based on the amount of public benefit determined by the council. And so those are the changes that we made based on the feedback that we received at the last meeting.
Thank you.
I would just add as well, just to clarify for the record of comments made earlier, so this would not apply to any existing buildings at Woodmont Commons, so there's no existing taxpayer that would receive any kind of tax exemption going forward. To perhaps best sum what I had stated at the last meeting, again, this is looked at as an economic development tool, and the way we look at it is better to have at least 50% or more tax revenue from development tomorrow, so to speak, than 100% of tax revenue from no development over the next who knows how many years.
So we're going to move to comments from the council first, then I'll move to public comment. This is an 8-page ordinance. Under our charter, ordinances are done by the council. So are there any questions here from the council? Yes, please.
Okay.
Please proceed.
So I'm glad that you did this, but I think it needs a lot more work. personally. I think that you only need 2-tier for 5 million up, which would include 10, you know what I'm saying? And then the other one would be for 5 million below, not to go below 2.5. I think when you put too many options out, it gets a little too convoluted, and it's just better to keep it simple, and we won't put the last word in there. The other thing is, on the first part, when you say, you know, tier one, the 40 to 50, I still struggle with that. I really think it should be maybe 30 to 40, and then the second one would be 20 to 30. And then I really think that 10 years is a long time. And if you need to push it, I think it should just be a straight 5-year period. So for the little guys, 5 years, it stretches it out in smaller payments, but for the bigger guys, they have the capability of getting funds in other areas when doing this. Asset value, it says increase in asset value. Are we gonna do things like how that power plant works? Like if they're not doing well, then they don't have to pay, or I just didn't understand. If you could clarify that verbiage for me.
Right, so assessed value is actually defined in the ordinances, the assessed value of improvements and structures as of April 1st of the tax year to which the evaluation
But
pertains.
this is for new developments, so do we need to, it wouldn't be improved because it's new, right? If they're not
No,
improving.
new construction is regarded as an improvement.
Okay.
But, I mean, to your point, I don't think and I could be wrong about this, but I don't believe that the PUD contemplates power generation facilities in this
Well, I didn't
in
mean
this
it that
area.
way. I meant.
As an example.
As an example. Thank you, John. I meant it as an example. So like, you know, when you do a strip mall, you evaluate it on whether or not it's fully occupied, and that's how it's taxed on, not necessarily just the land mass and the buildings on it, like everybody else. It's assessed in a different capacity, as I was explained to once, and I never knew that happened. So I wanted to make sure that this would be assessed in the sense of the actual building, not necessarily the profitability of the building or the people in the building.
I'm struggling to think of a situation where it would not be calculated based on the assessed value of the improvements of the building, the structure, the land.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, that's all.
Just to clarify, though,
Yeah.
and a strip mall, we'll use that example, but again, it's not a great example because the strip mall can't go in this area, right?
Right.
But a strip mall is valued a lot more when it's fully occupied than
Right.
if it was entirely vacant.
And that's how it's taxed, so I'm just
That's
saying.
how it's assessed.
But your assessment is on how much, I don't know, Mr. Ramsdell explained this to me once when it came to the power plant, and ever since then, I kind of had this cloudy confusion about it. But he was trying to explain to me on how the power plant got taxed on how much money they were making and how much they could charge for electrical, and I'm sorry I brought you into this.
Confused over the years.
Okay.
The difference here is what you're talking about is when you're talking about an ongoing concern worth hundreds of millions of dollars, like like an energy generating facility, its value fluctuates tremendously based on its revenues and on the price of energy, those types of things. And if it's a mall, different principles, but same overall structure, depending on how the mall is doing, what kind of tenants you have in there, what kind of leases you have in there, depends on how the mall is valued. The difference here is the structure of this ordinance and the state law. The tax relief is based on the difference of the assessed value of the improvements versus the original assessed value. In other words, without the improvements at the commencement of the tax relief period. And so the project may become, the building may become worth more, may become worth less during the time, most times less, but it's not dependent on the fluctuations in the marketplace. Rather,
Okay.
you have a fixed period, a fixed date, if you will, that the tax relief is based on.
Okay.
And that's really the difference here.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that explanation, because I was a little confused. But those were my suggestions, just because I really think that having it very streamlined and the subjectiveness be not as forgiving as some of this is just too much of a jumps in some of the areas, especially 5 to 10 years. Financially, that's a huge thing. I mean, Londonderry, as we all have been told many times by many people in this room, is a very desirable place for economic growth and development, correct? And we've got 2 exits off the highway, we've got an airport, a vibrant community. So it should be desirable in and of itself. So, we're hoping that we pull in those kinds of businesses that understand that. So for me, even doing this is a struggle, and I understand where it's coming from. We just want to get the ball rolling in these times to pull in some economic development. But I think that it should be 2. I think 50 to 40 is high, so I would go 30 to 40 and 20 to 30 with the 2, and kind of folding in the numbers. Just really, the option is, this is as low as we'll go, and this is, it obviously have different heights, but that's my 2 cents. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I need some more time to look this over before I comment on it.
Okay. Tom, anything?
Not yet.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. This isn't really a discussion. We're working our way through this. If you'd like to make a comment to the council, please come forward. I will give you fair warning ahead of time. If you come up here and you start to raise your voice and you start making accusatory comments, you'll be ruled out of order and asked to step down. There is a 5-minute limit.
I have another question.
Hi, sir. Name and address, please.
Yep, Bill Hamilton, 3 Carrier Street.
Thanks, Bill.
Couple comments. It seems like we're rewarding the big guys more than we're rewarding the little guy. That would be my number 1. We're giving $10 million projects a greater relief by the looks of things than we would be given to the small guy.
That's a good point.
And I don't know whether that sets too right with me. The other part of this
Be the other way.
that I'm hearing is Londonderry is a desirable place to build and to be, but the land has been sitting vacant since 2013 with this project. There was another project before that never even got off the ground. They were going to develop that exit 4A. It was going to develop in there, weren't they? Anyway, it's been at least since 2013, and it's still vacant.
So 4A is from 1986.
Right.
That's a whole
Yeah.
different.
So what makes us think now that we're going to be getting people? I mean, what's the surety that if we do this, that we're actually going to be getting people?
There is none. That's why we're having this discussion. We're trying to.
Okay.
So we're not coming here tonight to say this is what we need to do. The reason we have a public hearing is to talk to people, listen to what people have to say, because we don't have all the good ideas. We may have some bad ideas, and say, okay, what's the path we can do to see if we can stimulate things? Because frankly, Salem kicked our butt, and they're ahead of us. But right now, we're not getting as much revenue as we would like to get from these things to offset the loss that we took at the power plant. That's the reason we're having the discussion.
I get that. And I guess my point is, what's to make you think that you do this, that you're going to get more? I mean, that has to be questioned. That has to be thrown into this.
Absolutely.
Because it could sit there, do nothing, or it could just completely blossom out. Have you done this in other areas of town? I assume that was a yes up by the airport.
Correct.
And was it successful there?
Overwhelmingly.
Okay. So what's to make us think it wouldn't be successful here? And I guess that's a comment, not a question.
Yeah, and we're not looking to answer it. We agree with you. That's what we're trying to figure
Okay.
out.
I mean, I guess it is a bitter pill to swallow that you're going to sort of, in a way, be giving away taxes. But on the other hand, to your point, you got land sitting there with nothing on it. I guess I'd rather, if on a $5 million project, it's $22,250 taxes full rate on the proposed 22 or 23 budget. I guess I'd rather have $11,000 than none.
Right.
And that's a bitter pill to swallow. I get it, and I don't like it, but that's my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
I agree with you. I think people have to understand that the project down in Salem and the Woodmont project, the dynamics are totally different. If you go down, and I mean, Salem's been a successful project, but if you take a look at it, there's several factors there. Number one, multiple housing. And number two, the majority of the firms that have gone in there, you've got a hospital that's going in there, and you have a lot of retail, big retail people going in. Londonderry is positioned much differently. We're not looking for people don't want those big malls and those big shops. This is more of a downscaled. The concept is the same, but the scales of magnitude are totally different. So I don't think I'd want half the things that Tuscan Village has now in Woodmont. It just wouldn't fit, not the way that we're looking at this type of project. So there is a big difference between the two. And to Mr. Hamilton's point, I think we have to, understanding that, we have to look to see what we can do for the smaller businesses for that project, because that's what's going to fit in there. It's not going to be these big banks and big retail outlets. It's just not going to happen.
Yes. You look like you want to say something.
Oh, I just want to fix what I was saying before about the 2030.
Okay.
And I do agree with him. Why are we helping the bigger guys and not the littler guys, and maybe reverse that? And the other thing, to go to Jim's comment, Salem, Tuscan Village, they had all the infrastructure there. So they didn't have to pay to put that in to get that done. That was the biggest reason why that, plus its proximity to Massachusetts, was the huge reason why that was so successful so quickly, in my opinion. But I do agree it's supposed to be a different flavor, more village-like, so more of a mixed use. I personally, find certain things at Salem that would be nice up here. But the other question for you is on the 7.5% and then 5%. I guess it's under each tier, right? So on the first one, it was like 4%, excuse me. And then on B, it's 7.5%. And then it's on to 3, it's B is 5%. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
How are you, what are you thinking over there on
So,
those numbers?
It's a good question, Councilor Paul, and really what we wanted to see was that it kind of decrease predictably across tiers. And so we projected out.
Do I have that?
No, this is my own work product. But basically, what we did was we projected out, what would happen if tax relief was granted for a Tier 1 project at the 40% level? What would happen if it were granted at the 50% level? And we wanted to make sure that it wasn't out of whack in terms of how one tax exemption would work as opposed to another tax exemption based on the percentages that the council selected. And that was what seemed to work out. And so I can certainly provide you with this spreadsheet that I did. But if the council wants additional changes, it'll be moved anyway.
I get it. But I would like to hear from the other councilors if they think it's better to have 2 or 4, and if it's better to encourage smaller as opposed to larger.
Well, just on that point, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
the reason that we laid it out the way we did is, one, to encourage larger investments in the community in this particular area where it's laid out. So if you have a hotel there, that's looking to put in, a hotel that's going to be valued or assessed at $20 million versus a standalone salon that maybe is $2 million, right? The risk is a lot greater for that hotel person, but they're also making a much larger investment financially in the community by doing that. So 50% of, say, 20 million is still a lot more than, 30% of $3 million.
No, I understand the logic behind it. I'm just trying to be fair and equitable to everyone across the board who is a business trying to come in there and still be mindful of the taxpayer on a whole, that's all. But so why, Kevin, in your mind, if I can ask this, why would you think 4 tiers? Do you think that is definitely better than 2 tiers?
No, I'm not married to the tiers. I mean, we originally pulled this from Derry's ordinance. That's what we started with as the model.
But in Derry, they're doing it to rehab buildings as opposed to technically build new
They're
buildings.
doing both. They're doing both
but-
new construction and rehab.
Yeah, when I talked to Beth, she had said it was more, Bev, excuse me. She said it
Bev,
was more for rehabbing. So that's why I was thinking, I could see that in the many tiers in rehabbing, because different levels of projects.
Sure.
But something new, it's really,
But if I could just add that, we could, it's an 8-page ordinance or whatever it is. So it's not the most straightforward thing in the world. We can give you, to Kevin's point, a really simple ordinance, and that is Derry's ordinance, which allows the council to pick any number of any amount of tax relief between 0 and 50% for between 0 and 10 years. That made us uncomfortable, both from a predictability standpoint, from a developer standpoint, looking at what might we qualify for. It also just made us uncomfortable from an administrative efficiency standpoint and from a
I agree.
and so this is what we opted for. But there's a balance, to your point, to try to keep it from being overly complex.
right. I think there's somewhere in the middle, there's a happy ground, and that's my 2 cents.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding, Mr. Malaguti, is that if construction has begun on any part of the project, that right now would be in the future, that project is not eligible for any tax relief.
That's correct. Per statute, once construction begins, there is no eligibility for the tax relief.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay. So, anything else further from the public before I sum this up? Yes, sir.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. I believe I briefly spoke of this earlier, but I'm just wondering, our discussion with Woodmont or the developer, what is their vision? I know they got their master plan, okay, but that can change along the way, and I'm sure they've been working all along for many years to bring businesses in. Have they had difficulty doing that? And if so, why? I'm just wondering. And, once again, it's the justification for this. I mean, the benefit. I understand you have a piece of land sitting there, you're not making a lot of tax money on it. If you build on it, potentially you're going to get more tax money. Perhaps you're going to have more jobs for people, which is a good idea. But I'm just wondering, we've kind of made a comparison with Salem, where, yeah, that's kind of a different ballgame. But wait a minute, we did put water down, the state of New Hampshire did, to feed that project also to Salem and that project. So it wasn't like they didn't have it, or that was already there, okay? It was there, but it had to be upgraded, okay? So that was, which was put down 28 Rockingham Road. If that didn't happen, that development wouldn't have happened either. So, so here we are with this development that's gone on for 8 years, and yes, it's a good idea to kind of kick it along. Gotta be careful what I say. But I'm kind of struggling with the justification for it. It's fine to say, It's going to be ultimately more tax money. It's going to be a benefit to the town. But we also know there are going to be other costs, water, fire, water, yes, wait a minute, sewage, police, and so forth that comes with that. More development is more burden on the town and the taxpayer. So I personally kind of struggle with the benefit to the town. Yes, it's a great idea. We have this big project. It's moved along, but I'm wondering what the conversation is with Pillsbury Realty, Woodmont, and so forth. What has been their problem in bringing business in? And what kind of business? I mean, we also talked about a lot of residential. I mean, none of that's happened, and probably won't happen. Maybe it may not happen at all, for all we know. Because they can change their idea. Their master plan is just a vision, you know. So, have they been looking at bringing in, what kind of business have they been looking in, bringing in? We talk a lot about small business, which is fine. The original vision was kind of a town vision of kind of small streets, a lot of small businesses and so forth. Is that still their vision? And if it is, why are they having problems after all this period of time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one point of clarification. Of course, the Woodmont Commons Development Agreement would apply here, requiring Woodmont to maintain cumulative financial neutrality. And so any concern such as was just raised by Mr. Breslin as far as impact on town infrastructure, police, fire, et cetera, is covered by the Woodmont Development Agreement.
That is correct.
I would just also add to that, too, that the Woodmont Commons Master Plan is actually an approved ordinance. It's not a vision that can be changed on a whim. So in other words, they are required to have only a certain amount of residential density, business, commercial, that sort of thing. Any amendment or change to that would have to be approved by the planning board. So they cannot just change their vision of the master plan tomorrow.
Right, and the agreement covers the 500 to 600 acres on both sides of the highway, which is about 3 times the size of what is being constructed in Salem. Why they have not moved along, that's a good question for Pillsbury Realty. I think they've talked about that in multiple planning board meetings over the years when they come in for their annual report, which they are probably due for, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Perhaps they can come and see us before we get done with this. So on this ordinance, it sounds like we're continuing to look at how this can be a tool set that will enable the council to have some, ability to work with people. So with that said, it sounds like what we probably should do is continue this to January 10th and continue the conversation and keep digging in and seeing how to make this work for the community. Or if we can't, then we can't.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Public hearing is closed. New business, order 2021-22. Dave?
I have to step down because Mainline advertises with me.
Okay. Let the record reflect that Councilor Paul has stepped down for this portion.
Good evening again. Dave Wally, Director of Public Works and Municipal Facilities. I have a fairly straightforward request to make a withdrawal from the EMTF. On December 9th, the garage water heater developed a significant leak and failed almost 9 years to date of the original installation. A vendor was contacted for an emergency replacement on December 10th, and the new water heater has been installed, and that comes with a 6-year warranty on that. The allocation for the bill is $1,763.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to approve order 2021-22.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. We're approved, 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Councilor Paul has returned. Can I hold off on the water system here? Because I think that's going to be a fairly lengthy discussion and jump to the fire contract. Do you guys mind?
No, it's not too late. It's really not. Go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to jump the agenda to the fire contract discussion. I want to get my fire department and our town attorney on their way.
So, Michael Ramsdell, town attorney. So over the last few months, the town's negotiating team, which consists of the town manager, assistant town solicitor, and myself, have been negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters union, which is local 3160. And we have reached an agreement on the financial terms of such an agreement. And I say it that way because there are still some small, primarily language or cleanup matters to be taken care of. But the financial terms of the agreement, we are in agreement on, and there won't be any difficulty cleaning up the rest of the things we don't anticipate. To summarize the where we ended up and the terms of the agreement, I mean, there's going to be a warrant article that will have on it the actual cost to the town over the 5-year agreement. I'd suggest that's it's not misleading, but it doesn't tell the whole story, frankly, because you have to put it in the perspective of there is an existing contract, and if a new contract, a new collective bargaining agreement was not agreed to and passed by the voters, then the financial terms of the current contract would continue under what's called an evergreen clause, meaning that the same financial terms continue until there is a new agreement. So I will say that both the town's negotiating team and 3160's negotiating teams worked hard to get to where we are. And I'll also say, is the fire chief still here? He should hear this. I think the town should hear this as well. I can tell you that all of the members of the town's negotiating team were very impressed with the negotiating team on behalf of the firefighters union. In the past, when we've negotiated contracts, it's been much more difficult to understand what it was exactly that the union was looking for, and there were times that we had some concerns about whether individual members of a bargaining or negotiating team had certain self-interests that were creeping in. That wasn't the case this time. The negotiating team for 3160, frankly, they had a plan. They were articulate. They'd done their homework. I think what motivated us the most to really try hard to work with them instead of just fighting, basically, is that it was clear that these gentlemen were concerned about where's the Londonderry Fire Department going in the next X number of years. That primary among their concerns was the ability to attract new quality members and to retain the quality members that they have. And we were truly impressed by that. Where we ended up is it caused us to, we took a look at, again, I'm going to use the term market value, if you will, although it's, whenever you're talking about people, That's a bad phrase to use, but for lack of a better term, what we did was we took, I believe there are 9 individual positions in 3160's union, and we put together, we took the 9 towns in closest proximity size-wise, not geography, but size-wise, in New Hampshire to the town of Londonderry, and compared as best you can, because everybody's collective bargaining agreement is a little bit different, and not everybody keeps up with the information the way they should, but as best we could, we found that there were positions in the firefighters union that frankly were underpaid. They weren't getting paid. Their pay range wasn't where it should be in comparison to some other departments. We found out that wasn't true for all of the positions. And so we tried very hard to negotiate terms that would be, that would balance that out, so that what we shared with the firefighters negotiating team mostly was the idea that we knew the people in Londonderry didn't want to lose quality firefighters just over money. We knew the town's always going to lose some occasionally to big departments that pay much more money, but for people who wanted the quality of life here in Londonderry and served the town very well, we wanted to make sure they could be retained. So where we ended up in a nutshell is that in the new collective bargaining agreement, which would go into effect July 1, 2023, 22 goes to, right. Every member, there are 48 members, there are 48 positions in that union. They're not all currently filled, although my understanding is there's some hiring going on as we speak. Each member will get at least a 5% increase in year 1 of the 5-year agreement. And importantly, we also agreed to shrink the step tables. And what I mean by that is that when you are in a particular position, there's a step that you get an annual increase on based on your experience. Currently, in the current collective bargaining agreement, many of those positions have 12 steps, meaning that somebody as a firefighter, or could be a firefighter paramedic, takes them 12 years to get to the top of their pay scale. And we agreed that, number one, looking at other departments, many of the other departments had much shorter step tables, so we agreed to truncate the step tables. Healthcare was an obvious cost factor and topic of discussion. You may recall that in the current collective bargaining agreement, the town negotiated that the firefighters would change to the Luminos healthcare plan, which was a tremendous savings. It was a savings for the individual firefighters, but it was a tremendous savings for the town. And since the town pays 100% of the healthcare premiums of the firefighters who choose the Luminos plan, that's a tremendous amount of money. And we did not, there was a negotiation over whether they should contribute to their health plan. Ultimately, what we resolved instead is, instead of them contributing an unknown, well, a fixed percentage, but an unknown amount, instead, currently, and since the last advent of the last collective bargaining agreement, the town has funded individual members if they have a family or a 2-person plan. The town funds $2,500 towards a health savings account, and if you're a single member, the town funds $1,500 towards there. We negotiated that rather than a fixed percentage of the healthcare premiums contribution from the members. Instead, the town was going to reduce for each individual member, whether it's a family plan or a two-person or an individual plan, a reduction by $750 each. So that's a savings of the town currently with the filled positions and the number of people who get the Luminos plan. A total of $28,500 each year, could be as much as $36,000. In exchange for truncating the step tables and the salary increases or wage increases, particularly in year one, there are no cost of living adjustments in this contract. It is historically, there's been a fight over, at least negotiating over, is that going to be 2%? Is it going to be 3%? Is it going to be up to some percent tied? We negotiated an agreement where there would be no cost of living adjustments. Instead, there were pay raises that were front-loaded, if you will, so that you and the voters will see that the cost of the contract, the collective bargaining agreement, actually decreases every year for the town instead of increases that one normally would expect. And what won't show in the warrant article, but we think is critically important for the understanding of the voters, is that when you look at the total cost of the 5-year collective bargaining agreement that's been negotiated, that total cost to the town over what would happen if there was no new agreement whatsoever, if just under the current collective bargaining agreement, is only $306,000, an average of $61,000 a year. And so we think that that the negotiating team has done a very good job getting to this point, and quite frankly, it is a situation that you don't see very often, because the way the things were structured, the firefighters union is very satisfied as well, and I think that's again, that's a credit to their negotiating team. So I'll answer any questions anybody has, but.
Questions? All right, so we've been briefed through this process as this has been going, which is normally part of all negotiations. So normally the way that we handle this is that we will, knowing that the fire department union has agreed to the terms, we will vote on this as part of the warrant. So when we get ready to put it on the warrant, we'll vote then on this contract. I don't believe we vote on it now. We vote whether we favor it or not to send it to the ballot.
Yeah, I believe in the past, when we've had the public hearing on this, that the town council has indicated its vote on there at that time, and then it formally gets put on during the deliberative session as well.
So I'm looking for a consensus from the council if you're in favor of this. Yes?
Yep.
Yes? Yes. Good?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, we had a very good briefing by the town attorney about the nuts and bolts of this plan and how the negotiators have been working together very professionally. But that can get kind of dry as part of understanding what's happening. I just want to talk to you about what happens in real life. When you have an emergency in your home, what you want is a responding set of firefighters that are competent, compassionate, and fast. You want them to be fast. And I can tell you my own personal experience. I think I'm up to around number 5 in terms of rides in the ambulance.
Do you have a punch card for that, Tom?
Gets one free the next
I can tell you that the professionalism that I see, or that I have seen, is not dependent on me. They don't say, "Oh, he's a council, we better take good care of him." No, it's right by the book, and we have some of the most professional firefighters, I think, anywhere in the state. And you should feel comfortable when you go to bed tonight that if you need to call them, they're going to be there, and they're going to be there quick, and they're going to take care of you. So I just wanted to add that, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. And, you know, and again, to your speedy recovery. I also heard that Mr. and Mrs. Claus are pretty happy with the fire department. I understand they've gotten several rides this year. Anything further on the contract? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the water thing. Mr. Ramsdell, are you able to stay or do you need to go? I would like you to hear this water piece if you're able to stay.
My practice has always been, if the council wanted me here.
Tick, tick, tick. Thank you for that. The reason I say that is there are some things that I've been made aware of from the committee that are being discussed with and coming back around full circle around the report on this, and full circle back around to talk about townwide water again. So that's going to come up, and I will probably need a little bit of help and guidance around this. So with that, John. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. You taking no problem.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm John Trotter, Director of Engineering and Environmental Services, and with me this evening is Bob Carey, our environmental engineer. This evening, we're here to provide an update on the Londonderry Water System Expansion Assessment that's currently being performed by Weston and Sampson, consulting engineer on behalf of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Back on Friday, the 10th of December, there was a Zoom meeting that was held. Town staff attended. It was Lisa Draybeck, Mike, town solicitor, Mike.
I think Attorney Ramsdell would make sure that you're aware that I'm still the assistant town solicitor.
Assistant, no, absolutely. Bob Carey and myself. Also,
and you are again. Oh, never mind.
Don't insult me. Also in attendance were DES staff, including Commissioner Robert Scott, and then the engineering consultant Weston and Sampson. The purpose of the Zoom meeting was to present the draft report of the Phase 1 findings, the study that Weston and Sampson is currently undertaking. The town staff did provide feedback and suggestions that are currently being addressed by the Department of Environmental Services and Weston and Sampson. So in summary, the Phase 1 report identified anticipated additional water quantity that would be needed to serve the PFAS-contaminated wells within the town of Londonderry. So some of those wells are the individual residential wells, again, that are PFAS-contaminated wells, both inside and outside the decree area. The other wells are small private water systems that are serviced by private wells. Some of those systems are Century Village, Mid-Ridge Condos, Old Country Village, and Rolling Meadows in the south end of town. The second part of the report also identified a proposed backbone water delivery system. So basically, the pipes and the pump stations, valves to get the required additional flow to the town of Londonderry. They identified improvements and upgrades to the existing delivery system that exists today, and also construction of new delivery systems, additional piping, whatnot throughout the town. So Phase 2 of the report will identify the routes of the water delivery system needed to bring the water into the PFAS-contaminated neighborhood. So it'll go, if you familiar with some of the contaminated areas, there's like Sherwood, would be on the east side of Highwood, High Range Road. So that's bringing that piping into those neighborhoods. But that'll be all part of Phase 2 study, which is currently underway. And we're anticipating a deliverable by February or March of 2022. So that's where we're at with that.
So my understanding is that the staff has been having a discussion regarding some of the infrastructure money that is coming from the federal government to the state, and that you all have been discussing whether or not, we've been told by DES we're a number one priority, and that whether some of that money should be used to either buy existing infrastructure that exists from some of the water companies, or to expand water structure, drinking water structure. You guys have been having that discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy
You
to
share that with us?
I'm happy to take the conversation from there. So, as was mentioned, we've been waiting the results of this feasibility study for several months now. And during that time, there have been numerous discussions before the council where the town staff have had the opportunity to receive the council's feedback. And that feedback, as we understand it, has been to pursue all available options aggressively. We've also had the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to hear from the public during these various hearings by phone, in person, et cetera. And what we're hearing from the public, and I'm sure it's what the council is hearing from the public, is that water quality and availability is important. And I would note that water quality and availability refers not just to PFAS remediation, but also to other quality issues such as arsenic that are prevalent in the southern part of the state. And also just the general availability of water service if desired. What we're also hearing from the public is that controlling costs is important. And so going forward, we think we have a roadmap to propose to the council. As Director Trotter mentioned, there have been intensive discussions with various involved parties, including 3 calls with DES this past week and a follow-up call with the engineering firm that DES retained. Just in the past week, we would say that there's an emerging consensus among DES's engaged consultant that we may have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pursue a more comprehensive approach than had previously been discussed before the council. The prior approach had the town partnering with Pennachuck and perhaps other water utilities to expand their infrastructure across town. Let me be clear, that remains one option, but we believe now that a more comprehensive approach should at least be considered. What is that approach that DES and its consultant have been suggesting we might pursue? The town staff now believe that there is the opportunity for a town-owned public water system to come within reach. It is not a certainty. It is not something that is next year or even 5 years out, but it is coming into view as a possibility due to recent developments. Such a step would need to be guided by 3 different goals. 1, remediating the significant PFAS contamination that the council is well aware of. 2, expanding service across town. And 3, controlling rates that ratepayers are asked to pay. So what's changed since we last updated the council in the meantime? Well, the town just settled a rate case with Pennachuck where, though legally justified, ratepayers, including the town, can be expected to pay an average of 21% more than they are currently paying on their water bills. As I said, this was a legally justified increase as determined by our attorneys and expert witness. But that's cold comfort to folks whose Pennachuck water bills keep increasing and are likely to continue to increase. By way of example, Pennachuck has advised us that it intends to continue filing rate cases where they believe that's justified out into the foreseeable future. So the draft, the other thing that has changed is the draft Phase 1 feasibility study is now out. And we can now talk specifics, whereas previously we were talking conceptually. We now have a look at what's in place already and what is needed to build out that system to a greater state of completion. Another thing that's changed is the infrastructure bill. There's a lot of money available, and that money really is tailor-made for projects like this. Lastly, what we found is, in investigating various funding streams, that state eligibility requirements require that most of this federal infrastructure money is only available to public water systems. Of course, Pennachuck is a public water system, but what we're hearing from residents and also from other communities is a belief that a town-owned or a municipal-owned public water system may be able to control rates better than an entity with a unique structure such as Pennachuck. The DES's consulting engineer also cited the example of Hudson. The town of Hudson 15 years ago was in a similar position where we are today, being mostly serviced by Pennachuck. However, Hudson decided it could do a better job. It acquired certain infrastructure from Pennachuck, and then it subcontracted with Pennachuck to operate and maintain that system at favorable rates. Hudson retained a consultant to determine whether this made sense and how to accomplish it. What Hudson needed to know and what we would need to know if we wanted to move down this road is what is the cost or value of the infrastructure that would need to be acquired? What is the demand? If you run a water line down a street, which houses can be expected to hook up and which will not? What future rates can Pennachuck offer? If our consultant tells us that Pennachuck's forecasted rates are reasonable, well, that is a data point that would be helpful as the council tries to determine which direction to move. And what future rates would a municipal-owned system be able to offer in Londonderry? Only once we know the answer to these questions can we decide as a community which direction to go. In order to achieve these goals and possibly save money in the long run, we need to spend some money in the immediate term. Therefore, the town staff proposed for discussion a warrant article requesting $100,000 to investigate these questions. Specifically, we propose to seek funding to engage an engineering firm like Weston and Sampson to prepare a cost of service study and to assist the town through this process. We suggest this warrant article will make the general, vague article previously proposed to gauge resident interest unnecessary. Voters will have the opportunity to express their opinion in the specific context of supporting or not supporting a cost of service study and related expenses. Importantly, we would only be asking voters to authorize the expenditure of $100,000 for the purpose that I just stated. We are not asking them to approve at this time a water system in town, a water district, or anything else. What we are asking them to approve is a cost of service study and related expenses. Ultimately, as the council, I believe, would support, whatever direction we move, it will be the community's decision. At some point in the future, once we have all the answers that we need to these important questions, and once we know whether this makes sense for Londonderry.
Questions? Wow. All right, so this all came about literally in the last week. So the suggestion is instead of putting the question on to gauge interest, we put $100,000, we'll have to decide what the funding will be and ask the people if they want to proceed.
I think you need to have a price and to move forward.
Well,
I-
yes,
So I think that
agreed.
that's a logical step if we can do this.
Okay?
That's
So
my
why don't we proceed with what that would look like and get that back in front of us?
Thank you, Mr.
Anything
Chairman.
else from you gentlemen?
Nope. Unless you have
Thank you.
questions of us.
Anything legal else we need to do, Mr. Attorney Ramsdell?
No?
All set? Okay, good. Thank you. Move on to Resolution 2021-27, a resolution relative to the creating a composition of an energy-efficient task force.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Attorney Malaguti just walk you folks through this. Just as a reminder, this came out of a presentation.
The net zero one?
The net zero presentation that was done by the gentleman in Derry who talked about what they had done over there. And we've gotten a number of solicitations from different companies looking to do solar and other energy projects here in town. And so I asked Mike to draft up this resolution, creating a task force so that they're not all just running through the town manager's office anymore, but they would actually go through this energy task force to vet and make recommendations. So with that, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. So yes, as the Town Manager indicated, this grew out of a presentation that the council received at a prior meeting where a Derry town councilor and another representative of that community came and told the town council and the community here how they were able to essentially achieve net zero through some very aggressive initiatives that they took. And while I have not kind of confined the proposed resolution to just investigating net zero, because as the town manager indicated, there are other initiatives such as net metering and what have you that might be pursued to both reduce usage and achieve lower costs or no costs through net zero. The committee charge that's attached to this resolution is as follows: to identify, investigate, study, and make recommendations concerning available and appropriate means to reduce the town's energy costs. As proposed, it would consist of a member of the town council to act as chair and 3 members of the public, although, as with any ordinance or resolution that comes before the town council, this can obviously be changed if the council feels that there's a need for more members. I'm happy to take any questions that the council might have.
Any questions?
I still think that this is a great idea, so.
Okay, proceed.
I think we need a vote.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, do I really want, I don't know if I want, I didn't have this for approval in my, I only had this as a first reading, no second reading required. I'm having an adoption of 3, and that dates on here.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do not believe that a first reading is required, given that it's not an ordinance.
Yeah, I just didn't get anything to sign off on tonight on it.
I have a sheet, Mr. Chairman, that I can supply you.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that Resolution 21-27 is approved by the council.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Resolution carries.
Thank you.
All right, can I just sign the back of one of the other ones? Not sure why I didn't get that. Okay, budget. Justin. What do you got for us tonight?
Good evening.
So Justin, I think the first thing I want to do is I want to deal with this whole cybersecurity thing first. I know we talked about this whole piece around the cybersecurity and about taking $100,000 and taking it from here and there and everything. But what's come to the attention of the council over the last couple of weeks, and with some of the things that have happened in the country and in some of our schools, is that we really need to be able to have a relook and an update to all of our interaction in the community around our buildings, our schools, the senior center, the library, and everything, and make sure that we've got everything in place for our first responders to do the best job they can. And I think one of the things we want to figure out is how do we work collectively as a community to make sure that we are going to be able to have all the tools we need to be able to move as fast as we need to move and to be able to protect the community. So part of what I think we'd like to talk about is that we probably need to not only look at the cybersecurity piece of this with the police department, but also work with the police department around, making sure our notification systems and everything are in, top-notch running so that they can respond in seconds, not minutes, to any type of situation that may occur in the community. And I think that's, while I think it's a good idea to go into the budget and probably take the money out to try to do the cybersecurity piece, I don't think we can do both. And that I think we need to be able to become very clear with the community what we're trying to do. I'm not exactly sure how to propose this, and it is something that did come about out of the whole Michigan shooting and everything and brought attention to it. so that we understand, so that we can get the maximum visibility. So not only does the police department protect its records and its cybersecurity, but does the police department and the fire department have all the visibility that they need in this community to be able to respond to an event. So I'm not, we've talked about it. We've all become, educated on it recently. So this is a discussion. I'm not saying we're doing anything, but this is a discussion. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important for us, as we speak to our staff, that we're looking here to modernize and assure that our first responders are protected, that we protect them as part of our infrastructure. That's half of it. The other half is protecting the citizen bystander, if you will, that intersects with the police department on a very periodic basis. So I think we're looking to balance cybersecurity across both those platforms.
Anyone else?
Just one thing I might suggest, and certainly don't need an answer tonight, but I think the council may want to consider it as an option. So if we're looking at putting a separate warrant article on, we've already appropriated somewhere near $55,000 for cybersecurity upgrades, and that was supposed to cover parts of police in town hall. We could appropriate that for town hall's use. We could do a separate warrant article for, say, $100,000. I think this issue is serious enough to perhaps use fund balance money for that, and to have, the police would ultimately have to determine how to allocate it, but roughly $75,000 for cybersecurity upgrades, another $25,000 for anything that needs to be done, potentially with the school side. Understanding that, it'd be nice for the school to come to the table as well with additional funding.
But this needs to be a joint effort.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Town Manager, I would ask that, with the permission of the chairman, that we take our first responders, the chief and his staff, as they go through this, they look at gaps. Where are the gaps in our current systems, or holes that need to be filled, or need to be, hey, wait a minute, this whole area over here isn't protected, and we need to figure out why not, and then fix it. I think that's the kind of the micro tool that we need to exercise.
Do you gentlemen have any comments?
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever it is. It's been a long day.
It's a time zone.
And you've charged your cybersecurity to me, I guessed. We've done a couple of things. One is we spend about $150,000 a year and have for a number of years that isn't budgeted for, that we have to find on issues like general computer maintenance and the maintenance of our internal records, which are all becoming digital. A second piece of that is we do have some security with the schools by the use of the camera system. And that's in a change position because the company that we used to use, Enforce 911, which was a panic alarm system and an access system, we no longer use that. Not the police department's choice, but we no longer use that. Because we no longer use that, we've looked at other ways to accomplish this goal. And one of the major ways we've done that is through a system called Mutual Link. And the deputy chief put together a meeting, which we had today, with members of school IT, members of fire. Police and fire already have Mutual Link. It is subsidized by the federal government, at least to this point. It would have to be purchased by the schools or, for example, a town hall. It does plug in using IP gateways into existing infrastructure. It's surprisingly inexpensive as these things go. how are these two things related? They're related in that this is only the beginning. This issue of cybersecurity and digital protection of information is only going to get more intense. We've all been familiar with the recent articles regarding this major bug of the last week or so. These seem to be coming over and over. So this isn't going to stop. This is a foundational beginning that does two things. One, provide us the foundation to protect your information that is in your police department. And two, as the chairman articulated, allow fire and police to respond to emergency situations and emerging situations in seconds. The technology is dramatic. It's no longer a question of calling somebody, hooking up to a camera. It's a matter of instantaneous viewing. So these are the things that are coming. They're only going to get more interesting and dynamic in how we can protect you as citizens. Deputy, have anything to add?
As the chief mentioned, we're taking this approach seriously, as you guys are well aware. The demonstration we got today was outstanding, and we really think that it's a vital tool for our community to get on board with the schools, the police, and fire. As the chief mentioned too, they said we could also link into the town hall. We could add it to the library, any of the large businesses that come into town. So I think it comes down to somebody has got to spearhead this and take it, and we're fully ready to do that. We have another scheduled meeting coming up again. If you guys would like, I can give you a rundown, as you said, where we're at with some vulnerabilities. I can get you guys something together prior to the next meeting as an update between us and the school, and if that will work, I'd be happy to do it for you.
But that'd be great, and I think I'm not speaking for the council, but I believe my read of the council is that let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this is not one life can be lost because we did not get ahead of this.
Couldn't agree more. Frankly, this is why we brought it to the fore this summer as a priority matter, talking it over with the town manager and the finance director. This we view as the most compelling and important piece of law enforcement and public safety going forward. So
Well, not only do we want our children and our staff at the schools and at the other buildings to be safe, but we also want our first responders to be safe. We want our police and our fire people to come home to their families. With regards to cybersecurity, Peterborough lost over $2 million and only recovered $125,000 through insurance. So I think a lot of this stuff is speaking loud to us, and we need to listen.
We'll have something for you by the next meeting in terms of a high-level plan, and we'll also reach out to the other partners in our community, like the schools.
Yeah, I mean, while we absolutely hear what everybody is saying, and what everyone is saying about revaluations and taxes, and and where can we hold the line, and we've held it to 0.5% so far. We can't ignore these things as the world changes, and I know we believe we're well protected and in a small community here in Londonderry, but so did those people in Michigan.
Chairman?
Yes.
I don't think we can, as a community, tolerate asking our first responders, our police officers, to respond to I'll say it, a shooting incident in one of the schools. And before they go in, they have no visibility to the situation in that school. The cameras don't work, or someone turned them off, or whatever. I think we cannot allow that to happen. That creates a space that is very dangerous for our first responders and the children that we're ready to protect.
So the answer to your question is we'll spearhead it. Let's get going.
Yeah. Thank you.
So with that, Justin, what else do we have on the budget tonight? I'm sorry if I disrupted your...
Nope, you're good. That took care of a good chunk of it. The rest is essentially we have decreases in the operating and default budget, which is due to retirements and new hires of personnel. So the budget has gone down by another roughly $45,000.
So we're down another 45, yet we've got to look at these other things. Okay, that's good. Any questions from the council on the budget? All right, let's get prepared for a public hearing on January 10th.
17th.
Excuse me, 17th. Let's ask the Budget Committee to be here on the 10th so that if there's anything else that's outstanding before we go to the 17th.
Yep.
That would be great. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, Justin.
All right.
Approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes from December 6th as presented in our packet, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Planning Board, I got Planning Board reappointments first. I have your son up first, so would you like to?
Which I will step down.
So the first appointment I have is for Planning Board for Jake Butler to be reappointed to a 3-year full member. I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Mr. Butler's approved. Let the record reflect that Councilor Butler stepped down and now has returned. Next item is Jeff Penda for a 3-year term and Jason Knights as an alternate member for a 3-year term. I'll accept a motion to reappoint.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you. Please see the clerk. You need to be sworn in again and need to, and re-sign your oaths. Next one I have is reappointments for the ZBA. So I only have 2 here. Does that mean the other 2 are not looking to be reappointed? Suzanne
don't know.
Brunel and Neil Dunn?
I'm not sure that they've indicated one way or the other is how I've taken this. So,
All right, so let me be clear. Your term expires December 31st for Mr. Dunn and Ms. Brunel. So this is the last council meeting before the end of the year, so your term will be expired. So if there is a ZBA meeting before you can be reappointed, you cannot serve. I'll accept the reappointment of Brendan O'Brien for a 3-year term as a full member and Mitch
Fig.
Fay
Fig.
as an alternate member for 3 years.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Please see the clerk and be sworn in. Sue Drondry for a full-year term as a reappointment for the Heritage Commission. I'll accept the motion to make that appointment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. And I think that's all it for tonight. If your term has expired and you are unaware your term has expired, let's make sure that those people are notified.
And Mr.
Because they
Chairman,
cannot serve until they are reappointed, I understand.
the latest from the executive assistant that they have we have reached out, haven't heard back.
That's what I got here, yeah. So their terms expired, so they can't vote on anything. Okay.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask, did you also do the alternate member appointments for the planning board and ZBA? That would be Jason Knights and Mitch Feig?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure those were included. Thank you.
Okay. Liaison reports. Anybody have anything new to report? Seeing none, town manager report?
all set.
Assistant town manager report.
I'm all set for this evening, thank you.
Thank you.
John, can
Yes.
I ask Lisa something?
Of course.
Sure.
Lisa, any news on the?
I'm so glad you asked, thank you. I think I know exactly what you're going to ask about, the rebate program, right?
Yes, yes.
So in one of our conversations with DES last week, they did indicate that they're hopeful to get it on the January agenda of the executive council.
And
So-
have we worked on a system to put in place?
So
to-
Bob is actually working on the application as we
Okay.
speak. We started working on that, so we're
Great.
hopeful to have everything ready to go as soon as they give us the green light.
Thank you very much.
Sure, and I apologize for not bringing that up earlier. It just slipped my mind in the water discussion, so thank you for asking.
No problem.
Okay. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Everyone, please be safe through the holidays, and all the best to you and your families. We are adjourned. Thank you.